Welcome to the Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act at a time.
This week on the Kindness Project, we talk about Three Peaks, Brighton, and we have part 3 of our interview with Mark Halls from FirstStep.
High energy,
Yeah!
love is left in me.
Woo!
Apparently there's a rude song. Welcome to the Kindness Project. My name is Chris Dames. I am joined by a man who's a little bit under the weather and a girl who's just back from Brighton. It's Russ and Charlotte. How are we doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. And we're joined by a man who is very determined to get me involved in something I do not want to do.
What?
Your mountain stuff.
What do you mean by mountain stuff? Well, look, now I've done a marathon, I need a new challenge in my life, right? And what I'm thinking of is getting a crowd of people together to do something called, and if you're listening to this in another country, you might not know about this. It's called the 3 Peaks Challenge. I mean, Russ has already volunteered, which is amazing. Thanks for that, Russ.
No, I don't think I will be, mate.
And I will not be joining you either.
So who's coming then?
You and your imaginary best friend.
Oh, actually, Phil from boot camp has already said he'd do it. I reckon I can get a few people more. So the 3 Peaks Challenge. You're going to do it? Oh, so amazing.
Probably not old enough to do it.
Sophie's gonna do it. But the 3 Peaks Challenge involves effectively climbing up the 3 largest mountains in England, Scotland, and Wales. That might be my next challenge. It's either going to be that, or I was in a meeting the other day with a client, and he told me that apparently there's a challenge that now I've run the London Marathon, if I also swim the Serpentine in Hyde Park and do a 100-mile bike ride from London to Surrey and then London again, there's a special award for that. And you know how I love a little bit of medal bling for running, don't I?
Oh, I thought you were going to say trophies. You're always trying to get trophies on the...
It's not trophies, more medals, but yeah, all good. So you're back from Brighton. Tell us a little bit about that.
We went to Brighton. We slept several nights. I'm back.
You could have done that at home. What was the most exciting? You went to the Sea Life Centre, did you?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Touch the
the what? Anemone.
The anemones.
Anemone. Do 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 do. Anemone. Do 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 do.
The enemy of
Anemone,
my enemy
do,
is a frenemy.
The enemy of my anemone is my friend enemy. Apparently, was the anemone?
Was an animal crossing joke.
Was the anemone the best animal in the aquarium?
It was the one I got to touch. But they did have some.
They don't sting or anything like that. Anemones. Right. What are they like?
They're literally plants.
Oh,
They're basically the cross between a living organism and a plant.
okay, fair
Although
enough.
plants are living organisms, like they're sort of like alive plants. Plants are alive, but they're more reactive to stuff. Like if you punch a tree, it's not going to do anything. You tickle an
Why are you going around punching a tree?
I don't want to tickle a tree.
You want to tickle a tree?
No.
Right. Are you tickling a tree or punching a tree?
Punching a tree, tickling an enemy.
Tickling an enemy. About tickling an enemy tree.
An enemy's are plants.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Russ, have you ever tickled an enemy?
I thought you
No.
Okay.
No.
I can't say I punched a tree either.
No, me neither.
Oh, everyone's punched a tree at least once.
I have.
No, I haven't. Nobody.
No.
No, the adults in this family haven't punched anything.
Once I was like 5. And
Yeah, like when you're a kid, you try and pick a fight with the tree.
Who's picking a fight with a tree?
I had an imaginary friend and it was a tree.
What was the name of the imaginary friend?
Dave.
Dave the tree.
And he punched me and I thought I had a black eye, so I punched him back.
Right, sorry, ladies. You do realise this is a podcast about kindness, and you're talking about going around and hitting trees.
No, dude, you never watched the movie The Karate Kid, and just like,
Oh yeah, fair
and
enough.
like they always battle inanimate objects. That's the.
It's a training technique. It's a training technique. Fair enough. And we are also joined by a girl who's decided to join in the podcast and has come as her Halloween favourite, Weird Clown. It's Sophie Dames. How you doing, Soph?
Good.
And Sophie, can I mean, I was really stuck for a question in the podcast the other day, but
Genius.
you came out and modest. You came out with one that was absolute genius. Do you want to share what the question of the podcast is?
Good soup. Good soup.
What's your favourite soup, ladies and gents? What is the soup that you are loving the most? You can tell us about what your favourite soup is using the following online channels.
You can go to @HonorKindness to tell us your favourite soup is tomato soup. There is no other opinion. You can go on
No. People are entitled to other opinions. You can't tell them that tomato soup's the best.
You go to Facebook to tell you like tomato soup.
because tomato soup is the only opinion. No, I'm just kidding.
You go to Twitter to tell you like
Tomato soup.
Tomato soup.
potato and leek
So-
soup.
They can't go to a different platform for each soup.
Yes, you can.
There's too many soups in the world for that. There's too many soups and not enough
You can go
platforms.
back to Facebook.
Right.
Say any other soup.
All right. Okay. All right. Do that.
Where is tomato?
To say.
Twitter is the tomato option and Facebook is the other option. So how do they find us on Facebook?
So if you type the Kindness Project into the search bar, we should come up there. If you go to look at our website, it's www.kindnessproject.co.uk, or you. It's so very exciting. If you want to just Google the Kindness Project, we should come.
Yeah, we're up. You can email us at hollow@thekindnessproject.co.uk.
I'm assuming all of our socials are on the page,
Yeah,
the website.
yeah, they're all on the website, so you can go there. But what we'd also like to ask, and we don't do this often enough, to be honest, if you are a regular listener of the Kindness Project, and we know there are hundreds of you, please do me a favour, leave a review. Jump on Spotify, iTunes, whatever podcast platform you use. We'd love to hear what you love about the Kindness Project via email. Whatever you tell us to improve the Kindness Project does us a huge favour. And while you're there, if you want to throw in a favourite soup, we'd love to hear it.
Good soup.
Let's move on with the show, and the next part of the show is
Kindness news. I think of the structure of the
Kindness
show.
news. So Charlotte's going to do the first bit. It's Josh's story, why kindness matters in later life.
Josh Shelton is a group facilitator for standing together.
Timbro.
Yeah, Wales.
Standing Together Wales, a project which aims to improve mental health, well-being, and build community connections through peer support groups.
Here he shares some insight into the role that kindness has played in these groups since lockdown.
For the last 18 months, Standing Together Wales has been a project that encourages people in later life to get together and engage in deeper conversations. They aim to reduce loneliness and isolation in later life by facilitating neighbours to become friends. Now, that is a great project, isn't it? You're just making those connections with people who might live together, might live next to each other for years and years and years, just don't make that connection.
I like to think we're relatively good friends with our neighbours.
We've got really decent neighbours, actually, yeah.
It felt like we were playing a fruitful game of Scrabble, and the COVID-19 outbreak just flipped the board. Ruining a great game we were on track to win. It is now illegal to congregate. Isolation is mandated, and neighbours who became friends are cut off once more.
Well, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? I suppose if they've got a project that's designed to bring people together and suddenly they can't do it, what do you do?
You can clearly tell this man plays Scrabble with his big words like congregate and mandated.
I know.
And neighbours.
But he was playing Scrabble and then somebody flipped the ball. But what they had to do is find a new normal for the project.
We missed the project we had, but we had to find a new normal. We developed a telephone service, crucially putting social interaction between people at its heart. We started by making contact with our participants. With permission, we were able to pass on the message from one neighbour to another, sometimes providing people with the only contact they'd had from their friends in weeks. We have since moved on to making conference calls. Using just a mobile phone, we're able to merge calls between our participants' landlines, connecting friends who haven't spoken for over a month.
And the other thing they've done is use during the coronavirus being a bit more creative. There's a great capacity the organizer Josh says to be creative and kind in peer support groups. A partially sighted group member loves quizzes but can't take part in the paper quiz the resident scheme are running currently. We were able to conference call her and 3 friends to do a telephone quiz. She went on to win. Such sessions are heartwarming and fulfilling, but the real power of our project comes in the kindness shown by the participants to each other between sessions. That I love. It's an amazing project. It builds those so important community connections, and particularly in a society where elderly loneliness is such a huge issue. I think having people out there that are building those connections is fundamentally important. So important. Let's talk about another good news story. Thousands offer to host tiny homes with homeless residents in their own Seattle backyards. A pair of non-profits are housing homeless people in tiny sustainable homes in the backyards of charitable volunteers who decide to host them. The Seattle Bloom Partnership hopes to replicate the cultural shift brought about by Airbnb to tackle the homelessness epidemic in the Pacific Northwest, as well as introduce concepts of sustainable housing to thousands of charitable residents who have offered their homes.
After recommending a homeless resident outside of his architecture studio, Rex Holben transitioned his career towards helping others by starting the Block Project. Its name playing on the words for neighborhood and for the shape of the tiny houses he pioneered. Oh, because they look like Lego blocks.
They do. Seattle has the dual problems of expensive real estate and the third largest homeless community in the country, which led Holben to reason that tiny neighbours would have a much better impact than waiting for a big budgeted government program. This is an example of that grassroots support that people can give. He founded Block along with Facing Homelessness. The latter would find backyards in which the former could build small, low emission housing, and the government stepped in to make the process as legally expedient as possible. Zoning laws already allow for accessory dwelling units to be present on existing properties, and to ensure there's no impact on property tax for those volunteers, their backyards, the non-profits sign 5-year leases for their tiny houses. So what they're doing is building these small houses in their back garden and putting people without homes into these houses using land that, is volunteered.
But also, that. Because they're built on the back of people's houses, aren't they getting like a built-in support system as well?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I suppose there's an element of connection there, isn't there? Instead of being on the street, they potentially become part of these people's homes and families and lives. I absolutely love it. Right, let's move on to the next part of the show. We have got our interview. Our interview this week is the third part of Mark Hall's from FirstStep. If you haven't listened to the first 2 parts of the show, please go back and have a little listen. Mark and the amazing work they do at work. FirstStep is definitely worth showcasing, and please do take a look and see the work they've done on part 1 and 2 before you listen to this, which is the final part 3. Should we listen?
Let's do it.
Right. And talk to me a little bit about, because clearly the charity sector's had a tough time over the past couple of years, certainly with a lot of people using events to fundraise, and hopefully that's coming back now. But talk to me about COVID, how COVID and the lockdowns and the pandemic have had an impact on FirstStep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I held a public meeting. Shows how good I am strategic, Chris. I held a public meeting on the 11th of March, 2020. And I laid out my plan for the next 5 years. And I said, we might have a slight funding dip in January, February 21, but we're all set and we're ready to go. Right. And 2 weeks later, I was sitting in an empty building saying, what the hell just happened?
I mean, those Black Swan events, though, Mark, who predicts them really? Do you know? Nobody
Absolutely.
knows today.
Yeah, I mean, the only fortunate thing, Chris, is that I've got a sensory room here, so when it all gets too bad, I can go and sit in there and rock in a sensory environment. So we had to quickly spin on a sixpence because many of our children were quite vulnerable, so there was no way that we could bring them in, and so we had to do all sorts of quickly creating of records, and we used probably to the end of March to actually do that.
Right.
And then we threw fully into virtual services with Zoom and telephone calls and emails. And in the first period of lockdown, between effectively from April through to June, July time, we had 2,700 virtual connections with families, supporting them to the best we could, making them feel. We actually, I'm waving in front of the camera, but it won't mean anything to your podcast listeners, but it's a really simple Nokia phone. And if I wasn't in the office, the phone was diverted to the mobile, and our families knew that 24/7 they could call if they needed to.
You know what? Those old Nokias are pretty
Yeah,
decent,
fantastic.
aren't they? I mean, like
Absolutely.
battery life, you know, you're not gonna, you know,
Yeah.
and it's got perhaps my favourite mobile phone game ever, Snake.
Yeah,
Snake's
absolutely. Yeah.
really good.
So we had to adapt in that way. And although governments are desperately twisting everybody's arm to actually say, of course, all these virtual services are much better and we're going to continue to run them forever, our parents strongly disagree.
Yeah.
Because they're a very poor substitute for what went on, but they were better than nothing.
Well, I mean, if you look at the engagement you need with your families and the kids, there's no better way of doing that than face-to-face, is there?
No, well, we teach families through example a new language. So that what I noticed, when I came to FirstStep, I asked my office to be next to the playrooms because I wanted to be grounded in what the charity did. The trouble is, it's the hottest room in the building in the summer, but it's worth it. And so, you know, every child that comes in and every parent that comes in, we teach basic sign language in the form of Makaton. We teach them how to use picture embedded messages to help with communication, because a lot of the meltdowns come from children's inability to communicate and the parents' inability to communicate. So if you go on.
One of the things that I noticed is there's always that element of learning through repetition. You know, that element of, because one thing that I found, well, two things actually that I took from attending the session that you very kindly invited me to, how important song was.
Yep.
So singing was really prominent, but also that repetition element of learning, and it's all those sort of things that.
Do you think about your own kids, Chris? If you can cast your memory back that far, is they had their favourite stories, didn't they? They wanted the same thing time after time because it's familiarity.
I mean, the only thing they get bored of, Mark, is the time I repeat stories all the time.
But that's the problem we have as we get older.
You're right.
Yes, it is. But that's about structure, and particularly any of the children who have a social communication background, structure is vital to them. And with children who will ultimately be diagnosed as autistic, it's not that they're unaware, they're super aware. So they're there. You know, it's a bit like you know, that when you look at I don't know if you saw the autistic lad who drew, went and sat on in the green area on the on the square just opposite the Houses of Parliament, and actually drew the Houses of Parliament. Started to sketch it out. Went home, finished it off, and they got a picture of the Houses of Parliament, and it was in perfect perspective and with the right number of windows.
It was almost photorealistic, wasn't it?
It's scary, you see, because these kids are super. I mean, I've one of my grandchildren is just on the edge, because the autistic spectrum is huge, and I actually think we're all on there somewhere. You know, in that way. And he mum and dad take him to the Father Christmas, And he went, they'd gone the same few years to the same Father Christmas, because he's well enough aware to say, there's only one Father Christmas. You can't palm me off with a different one of bin. And he walked in, and this was as a 5-year-old, and he said to Father Christmas, he said, that bin wasn't there last year, it was over there.
Right.
And people said, what? They went
Yeah.
up, got the photos out. It was absolutely right.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
so
that
it's,
memory.
now, if you're right, and this was one of your starting places, if we can get these kids into roles and into a style of life later on, which we capitalize on that impact,
Yeah.
or on that advantage they have, then it's great. But also, parents have to be really wise that sudden changes to plans give rise to a meltdown.
Yeah.
And you've got to take the longer way to actually get there. So I think what we seek to do, and you're right, I mean, 12, you'll hear me, if you're in my office at the time, I'll start to sing along with them. And now it's time to say goodbye, you know, because that's the song they always finish on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you watch on our other video on the website, where Charlie is in with the music therapist, and she starts to sing that song, and now it's time to say goodbye, and he gets up and he's walking out the door.
Gotcha.
Because because the
He knows.
framework is established, and he knows, and of course that creates a great degree of security for the child.
And I suppose with a lot of your kids that you help and support not being as social as potentially other children, how important is it that they're around other people?
Vital.
Right.
Because we have to be tough to be kind to our children. One of the problems we can have, Chris, is if a child, and quite often they are shared between us and a mainstream provision, they can go to a mainstream provision, and when they don't write the reports, they say, oh yeah, Harry, he's perfect. Never have a problem with him. We write our report and we talk about all the problems we're facing. The difference is when Harry goes to the mainstream provision, they let him do what he wants.
Whatever he wants.
When he wants to do it, most of the time with an iPad. And in actual fact, in truth, what they're doing is warehousing it.
Yeah.
When Harry comes to us, it's on a schedule, and we're building a structure and a framework. And guess what? When we have snack, everybody sits down together and we have a snack together. Harry might always have walked around at home eating, grazing, but we know the difference in the long term it makes for a family if there is at least 15 minutes when everybody sits down at the table together and mum can actually go,
creates a habit.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Can I just tell you quickly about another child as well, which is quite different? And this was a young lady called Imogen. Her story is on there as well. And she's profoundly deaf with cochlear implants. And she came to us because the local deaf school couldn't manage her.
Right.
So the specialist people for dealing with deaf children couldn't manage a deaf child. So they came to FirstStep, who is generalist. Okay,
Right.
which is an interest starting.
It's strange. Yeah.
When she came to us, she had the protective helmet on. Because she was known that if she got frustrated, that she would look for glass to bang her head on to try and break the glass with her head.
Right.
And if she went into a serious meltdown, she'd rip the hat off, she'd pull the connections to her cochlear implants off, she'd try and throw them on the ceiling, and you've never seen meltdowns like it. And so much to the point that when we were aware of this, we do have some low-level glass in our quadrangles outside. We actually got specialised film to both sides to protect against it. And so she came in and she was extremely, I think violent would be the right way to say it. And this was in June, July time. And contrasting with that, Christmas, we have our Christmas party. And I was in the Christmas party and I saw the Imogen that we had prepared a playroom for because she was at risk of damaging herself and others. And I saw a young lady with a huge smile on her face. And as I walked into her hall, she waved at me. big smile on her face, and she was standing in the middle of the 2-foot diameter bubble tube, and they were bringing bubbles back over to her. We saw a transformation in 6 months.
Yeah.
Right? The child was the same. The parents were the same, but what we'd done is we'd just managed to regulate those emotions. We'd strengthened the communication, and this little girl, she's such a bright button, because when children are profoundly deaf, they teach them British Sign Language. And what she would do when we were signing with the children, she would quickly do her BSL, and then she would do it again in Makaton.
Right.
Same as everyone, and she'd laugh at us because she'd done both at the time that we were doing it. And I mean, you know, I thought for me that was just a story whereby potentially Imogen could have gone to a pupil referral unit to deal with what they saw as the problem was, but actually they didn't understand the problem once there was an understanding. So, you know, that's part of the magic. That's part of the fairy dust that comes through, is because we believe in children, we believe in the parents, we know that if we understand, then we can make a real difference.
But you made an interesting point earlier when you said about the, you know, again, this is in part potentially resource, and there's probably a bunch of other reasons, but that warehousing of kids that are different is probably something that happens in mainstream, isn't it?
Yeah, the problem is that the mainstream is about creating something that works fairly well for the majority.
Yeah.
Those who are at the bottom end of it and the top end of it don't do so well.
Well, I mean, you could argue, and again, we could have a debate about sort of mainstream education, but you could argue that mainstream education is still built for an industrial age that doesn't exist anymore. But we definitely haven't got time for that. We need another podcast. Exactly.
Because that would mean politics and economics.
Well, that one's over a beer or 12, Mark. When we get the chance to do that. Talk to me about fundraising. So fundraising for FirstStep, and I know that one of your supporters, Freya, raised quite a lot of money recently on the
£10,000.
So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, just tying on from that, what happened during COVID is that because the local authority had removed their funding from us back in 2017, we funded it from our reserves, which is the charity term for savings, for 3 years, and that money was coming to an end during COVID. So actually, one of our services, which we're very sad not to be running, is educational services. We had to discontinue that, and we had to make half of our staff redundant. So that was a real blow. It wasn't COVID that did it. It was them removing the money back in 2017.
Gotcha.
And so now we don't receive any money from central government or local governments. All that we do is generated through fundraising.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we fundraise in a myriad of different ways. There are people who make one-off donations, people that have standing orders where they pay £5 to £100 a month. We go out to grant funders. We've got volunteers who do fundraising events, and not to make too fine a point about it, some very generous people who support the people who do the volunteer events. Yeah. So you know that somebody did the Three Peaks Walk for us a couple of weekends ago, magnificent feat, and he raised £1,500 for us. That's so significant to actually do that. We encourage in lieu events, so sometimes people have got a birthday party, or even somebody recently, they were getting married from the second time, and they said, we don't need all this. I was going to use a word I shouldn't have used then, but all this stuff that people buy you for a wedding, let's give the money to FirstStep. So that's been a significant way. And corporates are another really important part. Clark's Carpets raised during the COVID year £12,000 for us. Western Co just gave us a donation for £5,000. And also, we've just finished our golf day, which was the most successful we've ever had, both in terms of number of golfers. We went up from 80 to 114 golfers.
Amazing.
And that day alone raised £21,000 with businesses sponsoring and an auction which went crazy, and people were bidding more for things than they were actually worth because they were supporting the fact.
What was your big sponsorship win? What I'm sorry, not big, but big auction win. What was the item that went down the best?
That's interesting. I think we had a number of things. We had a West Ham t-shirt, signed shirt that went for £600, which was great. We had a golf bag that was signed by Ian Poulter. Is he a golfer? I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, Ian Poulter. Yeah.
Yeah, and that went for £600. But the one that was really the funniest was that we had a number of four balls, which is where it's for four people to go and play golf at a different golf course.
Yeah.
And you can argue what it's worth, probably somewhere between, £70 or something like that for a four ball. These were going for about £250, £300. And there were tables of people that were just bidding against each other. And they were saying, they were doing the maths, and they were saying, like, £300. If we go £300, that's £75. We can afford that. And so I think that was the most exciting part.
Getting four people along, we'll just throw in £75 each, go for a game of golf.
I mean, off the auction, we raised £4,500.
Yeah, I mean, my funny auction. I've got two funny auction stories that I'll quickly share with you. Number one, I went to a charity event a few years ago with Richard House Kids Hospice, who are down in East London, and I bid for a 5-night stay in a hotel in Kuala Lumpur. Number one, not realising it was without flights, and number two, only after realising that it takes a day and a half to get to Kuala Lumpur and back, and I'm going there for 5 days. And in the end, I took my dad, and we had an amazing time in Kuala Lumpur. It's a brilliant place. And then the second one was I went to an event again to support St Francis recently, and we put some money in and won a signed Ed Sheeran with his guitar photo. Yeah. So Cassie wanted it. She bid for it. So when it came home, I went, "Where are we going to put that?" And Cassie has put it in the downstairs loo, right? And so, like, every now and again, one of the kids will come out and of the downstairs loo and just go, "Dad, Ed Sheeran's looking at me again, and it's weird." And it's just like, I don't know why we've got that photo up where it is, but it's just there.
Anyway, I digressed, and we were talking about Freya. So Freya was a young lady who had cerebral palsy, and she wanted to do some fundraising for FirstStep, and it was at the time a year on after Captain Tom, and there was the fundraising going on with there. And so Mum said, "Look, this is what we're going to do," is that she had just been given her walking frame,
right.
And if the videos are still on the website, you can see that her legs are partly tethered to the walking frame. So as the frame is going forward, it's pulling her legs and it's building the strength that's in there. But a tremendous amount of effort that she has got to exert into doing that. So she was doing 100 steps in a walker on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday and Monday, because it was a bank holiday weekend. And we saw Mum by chance sent us a video of her first walk in training.
Right.
And we saw the energy, and we felt that Freya was such a poster child for FirstStep and families. We thought, we've got to do something with this. And this is what I mean when I say we have to be really reactive. So we quickly push that out on our social media, and then we set up that we were actually going to film and publish each day's walk. And the family were a big family. They did a huge amount of fundraising. We pumped it out to all of our supporters online. BBC came down and actually filmed it.
Amazing.
Her on one of her walks at the Railway Tavern in Hornchurch, and you know the figure was at the end we got up to £10,000, which was absolutely an astonishing feat. But you know, when what we saw, and Freya is non-verbal, but she is full of cognition. She absolutely knows what's actually happening, and you could see that she was so motivated. She could hear the count going on, and as she got to the end of the line each time and hit 100, and everybody went crazy, and she was waving around as well, and then she just bent down and rested her head on the frame because she was absolutely exhausted. And I think to me it talks of the way that for the parents and for the children, every day of their life is a struggle. It's the struggle whereby they say, do we give in to this or do we make it happen? And you know, Chris, you and I, we just don't know how fortunate we are. And I think that we did show at the golf day the Breakfast Mums video, and I think that, you know, I think everybody there who had a child or a grandchild was just saying, thank God, and these people just need help.
How lucky are we?
And so you mentioned that you're peaking on 100,000 visitors or receivers of the podcast, and you mentioned that you've been down to FirstStep. I'm putting an offer out here tonight. We're very happy for every one of your podcast visitors to come down and see FirstStep. Not all on the same day, please. But
that might be difficult. And as we're a global podcast,
okay.
I mean, we might have people flying from all over the show to come and see us, Mark.
But I think that, you know, and it's not just all about FirstStep, because many of these people will have connections and be involved with charities locally to them. But I think they can take inspiration and actually from that. And because I think that the people who triumph over adversity in their life deserve huge respect.
100%.
And you know, Freya is just she's such a sweetheart, and there's one glorious picture on the website with her hands raised high celebrating her run. It was at the Hornchurch running track where that one was taken. And
so she did she do it in different venues?
The final day, which was on the Sunday, she actually came and did it in the car park of FirstStep. And because we'd seen what happened on the previous days, we knew that we needed a flexible ribbon line. Right. So people were holding the ribbon because we couldn't tell where she'd finish 100 steps. So it was a great day. So she's an absolute sweetheart and such a poster child and an example for parents. And if I just say that when Freya first came, it was her great grandmother that brought her, because Mum couldn't face bringing her. And then here later on in life, here's Mum actually championing.
Actively supporting, and I love that.
Freya's in a mainstream school now, you know, with lots of support around her, but with a package and an understanding of her motivators and things like that. So we can, if you like, spin these children off after they've been with us and known that we've done something which impacts their life long into the future.
And this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, Cassie would tell you, I mean, she worked, before she joined the family business, she worked in early years for years. And the impact of positive, you know, those positive, you know, actions and behaviours, supporting kids in the early years is so important for their longer term.
Absolutely. And actually, the thing that frustrates me the most, and I know we're up and over time, but the local authority pulled £135,000 worth of funding for it. They're going to spend vastly more than that on an annual basis, because children who don't get that early intervention are going to draw more on their services later on in life. It's such a false economy.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's if you forget about the misery for the child and the family
in the early years.
You know, but
now, what you can't see, Mark, is Cassie standing in front of the laptop, just nodding and agreeing with everything you were saying.
Well, I want to know, when's she coming down?
Well, on a day that the other 100,000 listeners don't shut up. All right, we'll have to plan it well.
Let's get her down first.
I won't want to leave.
She said she wouldn't want to leave. Right. So tell us a little bit about where people can hear more about, they've listened to the podcast, they're inspired to get involved and help you out. Where can they find out more?
Okay. I guess the key place to actually go to is the website. It's not the best website you've ever seen, but I think it's got a lot of passion onto there. So that's www.FirstStep, that's one word, .org.uk. They can search for us. We've got a Facebook presence, which is not huge. I'd really say, let's simplify. Let's say go to the Facebook.
Go to the website. I'll go to the Facebook.
They can call 01708 556 355, and that will bring them through to the office. And crazy fool that I am, I'm also going to give them my private mobile number, which is 07949 273 819, and you can get straight through to me. If they want to email me, it's mark.halls, HALLS, @firststep.org.uk, and we'd love to speak to you.
And just so Mark does actually get some sleep, listeners, please don't all phone at once. I mean, that is a brave and bold move, giving out your mobile number on a podcast with a decent listenership.
Please don't tell my wife that I've just done it. All right. Most parents have my mobile number, but very few have misused. But the trouble is, if you're a worldwide podcast, it's when the Australians ring that the problem might be.
3 in the morning.
I don't mind. I'll pick that up, and anyone who's local enough, please come down and see us, because I can whitter on for hours, and Chris, I can, but there's nothing quite like coming there and seeing and feeling, because I think that you'll feel some magic in the air when you see what's going on.
Yeah, and I certainly felt that when I came down.
And also, just sorry, one other thing which I didn't mention: business is hugely important to us. We'd love to build a whole network of businesses who want to support. One of the things that I'm looking at to get these educational services up and running is to find perhaps 5 or 10 businesses that join together and support a session. Sessions are expensive, but the impact is huge. So if you're a business owner there, I want to talk about coming and seeing and doing something great for building the corporate social awareness with your team. Come and hold your sales meetings here. We're very flexible. But sorry, I'll shut up.
Amazing.
I think you're supposed to be going away on holiday.
Well, I'm meant to be on a spa break after my marathon run next week, but it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for chatting, and I look forward to catching up soon. See you later, mate.
Thanks very much indeed.
So that was the last part of the Mark Halls interview. What did you think?
It was good. It's good.
Yeah, it was good. Certainly listen to the amazing work that Mark and the team at FirstStep are doing. If you can support them, and I know in the last part, Mark gave all of his contact details. Bizarrely included his mobile number, which on a podcast with a listenership like ours, I suggested that he might not want to do, but he did anyway. But yeah, let's get on with the show.
People have my phone number. I'm not giving them my phone number.
No. Kick off. What's the time?
Tis the end of another podcast.
And the end.
It's never really the end, because the end is always the beginning of something entirely new.
It is. And this is last week's question of the podcast this week answered. We've got a bunch of different answers. John Cook said, the question was, what's the thing you want to tick off next off your bucket list? And John said, shout the rude word off the top of the Eiffel Tower. Patrick Floyd said, I don't have a bucket list. There's things that I want to do and I hope I'm able, but I don't have an actual list. Ian L said, I'd love to row the Atlantic. That sounds amazing. Victoria Ellis said she wants to travel Texas. Alison Hagen says she wants to run the Reykjavik Half Marathon. David Hearn, we can make this wish come true, aka for you, David Hearn, having my comment read out on the podcast.
Done.
Sorted. You need to find a new thing for your bucket list. Nadine Stevenson said win a huge amount of money. Daniel Sewell said it's a super simple one, but I really want to eat Chinese out of a box with chopsticks like they do in the USA. Emma Stevens-Tang said diving head first off the 5-meter diving board. She's having lessons at the minute. And Victor Sapp said, have a podcast, pizza oven, and a Tesla. Now, actually, the pizza oven and podcast will do. And on that note, my friends, that's the end of another Kindness Project. Have a lovely week, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.